So to celebrate this ceremony this year, we did something different. To celebrate this, we are bringing you a brief dramatization of a real event. FBI agent and private secretary Clyde Tolson, which will be me, will be delivering a memorandum to his boss, the feared FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, which will be him. And we'll be responding to a student's request for information about the life of defense attorney and human rights advocate Clarence Darrow, which will be him, none other than Allan Van Fleet. So the scene is the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. Hoover listened as I described Clarence Darrow's life and career. Mr. Hoover, a college student has sent you a letter inquiring about Clarence Darrow, that dreadful defense attorney.
Communist sympathizer. You've got to say communist sympathizer. Reds, Bolsheviks, Pinkos, Russian fellow travelers. God, I hate Russia.
Yes, Mr. Hoover, Clarence Darrow is a piece of work.
Yes, he was. A disreputable outside agitator. Threatened this country.
So what should we say in our response?
Well, let's see what we've got. We've got some college student, probably just infected with that liberalism that one finds in large courtrooms and universities these days. And he wants to know about the rabble-rouser, that disreputable defense attorney, Clarence S. Darrow. So, what do you suggest I should say?
You know, I've had one of our least busy agents, Mr. Mulder, prepare a memorandum for us. It's pretty neutral. It's easy. Even if it goes to the press, it's going to be okay. I think we should just go with that memorandum.
Mulder, you say? Special agent, FBI. All right. Bring this memo to me. Let me see what you have compiled for your research.
Here's the FBI file.
I knew Hoover had a file on me.
Give me a summary of the information we have available about. What about?
You know, Darrow's father was an atheist. He was book obsessed. He was a coffin-making undertaker. He made Darrow pessimistic about human life and nature.
Whose father doesn't?
He was born poor and was a poor student.
Go on.
Date of birth,
I was born April 18, 1857.
place of birth,
Kinsman, Ohio, near there.
education,
Allegheny College, but I dropped out after 1 year. I couldn't afford it.
law school,
University of Michigan School of Law. Some of you may think it's a hotbed of radicalism, but I also had to drop out of that after 1 year. Again, I plead poverty.
bar.
After that, I read the law.
What about the bar? Did you take the bar exam?
I passed the Ohio bar in 1878. I was 21 years old.
That's resume material. But what I want to know, I used to see the man in the newspaper headlines, but what made him tick? What motivated him? Most importantly, what did he fear?
In Kinsman, Ohio, a young Clarence Darrow watched local boys leave home to join the Union Army.
Huzzah for the Union, they said.
Clarence Darrow's father was an odd duck, an infamous atheist, village infidel. By trade, he was an undertaker and a coffin maker.
Reading Marx when he should have been studying the Bible about.
I love my father. He taught me to love reading but I also fear you. You know, I wrote a novel, Farmington it was called. In it, I write about a young boy, about 10 years old, from the Midwest, and he watches as this young man goes off with a smile to fight for the Union. Then 3 months later, the boy, he attends that soldier's funeral, and his mind is filled with terror as he watches the soldier's body lowered into the grave. I was that boy.
Have you seen how fear can make a man weak?
I have. I've seen that. Weakness is what you have to find in a man. But those sort of scenes on the battlefield, hideous. Think of Grant, Cold Harbor. What a slaughter, what a butcher he was.
You know, some boys never came back home.
And some came home late.
For Darrow's father, death was daily business.
Yet I saw death as an enemy.
Like most people, Darrow feared death. Unlike most people, he grew up seeing the dead, one corpse after another, in a home where his father met regularly with grieving fathers, mothers, and children, lost husbands, and crying widows. Perhaps Darrow's familiarity with the grief and loss of life explained his lifelong crusade against capital punishment.
I never visited the corner of my father's shop where the coffins were stacked, and I never went there after night.
Darrow's father took him to a public hanging.
And so I swore to oppose execution.
He quit a good job defending railroads to represent radical union labor activists and murder cops, like Western Federation of Miners Union leader Big Bill Haywood and one acquittals.
Bolshevist thugs.
G.B. Deb has always been one of my heroes.
He won every death penalty case he personally tried.
Except for that first one. Except for the first one. He lost that one. But then again, he only came to that one on appeal and was tried by somebody else.
You know, I even got life sentences for those confessed thrill killers, Leopold and Loeb.
Didn't he win a jury acquittal for a Negro who shot a white man?
That was in Detroit. Aussie and Sweet had just bought a house. Just bought his own house in a white neighborhood, and he was fending off a white mob coming to throw him out.
A journalist once asked him, "To what do you attribute your success? Was it hard work?"
And I answered, hard work is responsible for me being a successful lawyer. And I learned the lesson young. You see, I was 16 and I hired out to a local farmer. First day, I pitched hay in the hot sun all day. Second day, I pulled fat beetles off of potatoes. And then and there, I chucked that job and swore I'd never do another day of hard work in my life.
An outside agitator and a gadfly that Darrow showed up everywhere he was not invited, then stuck around.
You can only protect your liberties in this world by protecting the other man's freedom.
Indeed, the stage, the arena, the courtroom, Darrow always demanded the limelights.
The stage, the arena, the circus, the courtroom, they're alike. And that each has its audience, thirsty to drink deeply the passing show. Right, Susman?
What a man. What do we do with that?
Darrow would run a long hat pin up a huge Havana, then light it before the prosecution could present its best witness. He'll hold that cigar over his white suit, and all that ash would grow and grow The jury focused on that cigar and not on the prosecution's testimony as they waited for that ash to fall on his white suit.
But it never did.
P.D. Barnum could have learned a thing or two from that man.
Now, before you get too excited, you're not going to be able to get away with that today. First of all, try to find a hat pin in this town. Right, ladies? Second of all, suppose you find some substitute like a turkey trussing needle. Try getting it past security of the courthouse. You know, my God, the way things are going, they may as well pay any smoking in the courtroom.
Like I said, he was a dangerous man.
I afflicted the comfortable and comforted the afflicted.
Yes. Yes, he did.
You know, the world is made up, for the most part, of morons, natural tyrants, sure of themselves, so strong in their own opinions, they never doubted anything.
You know, that may have been the case at the beginning of the 20th century, but it's certainly not the case in these modern times.
So he mocked the fundamentalist traditions and the legislative initiatives of his times.
Some of you say religion makes people happy. Well, so does laughing gas. So does whiskey. You know, I believe in the brain of man. I'm not worried about my soul.
Then there was State of Tennessee versus Scopes, evolution on trial. And he lost that ridiculous monkey trial. The jury found school teacher John Scopes guilty, and they assessed him a $50 fine.
Yes. But didn't he win that case on appeal? Didn't he make that socialist rabble-rouser, Bryan, look like a fool on the stand?
I set out to show that William Jennings Bryan was the master of funk. So I called him as an adverse witness, as an adverse expert witness to testify about the accuracy and the inerrancy of the Bible. If I could show that even the great William Jennings Bryan, the self-proclaimed Bible expert, the man who gave us the cross of gold speech, could not offer authoritative interpretations of the Bible, then how could John Scopes be prosecuted for teaching things that challenge the Bible out of the science textbook that the state of Tennessee had approved? So, here's what I did, and I want to refer to the transcript because after 93 years, things get a little fuzzy. So here's what I asked Bryan on the stand. It was hot that July of 1925, so the judge let us put on the trial in shirt sleeves. Jury was in shirt sleeves, and so was Bryan. And I called him to the stand. And I asked, "You've given considerable study to the Bible, haven't you, Mr. Bryan?" And Bryan answered, "Yes, sir, I have tried to." So I asked, "So you made a good general study of it?" And he said, "Yes, I have. I have studied the Bible for about 50 years, or sometime before that. But of course, I have studied it more as I have become older than when I was but a boy. So now I drill down. You claim everything in the Bible is to be literally interpreted?" Well, Bryan, he got clever now. He's a clever man, Mr. Bryan. Remember, he was Secretary of State? He'd even run for president, and not just anybody can get to be president. And he said, "I believe everything in the Bible should be accepted as it is given there. Some of the Bible is given illustratively. For instance, ye are the salt of the earth. Now, I would not insist that man was actually salt, or that he had flesh of salt, but it is used in the sense of salt of saving God's people." So the battle was on. And I asked, "Well, what do you think that the Bible says about creation? Do you know how Bishop Ussher got his estimate of 4004 BC? And Bryant said, I never made that calculation. And I asked him, is it from the generations of man? I would not say that. Well, what do you think? I do not think about things I do not think about. Well, do you think about the things you do think about? Sometimes. So now, I'm getting down to it. Do you think the earth was made in 6 days? And Bryant says, not 6 days of 24 hours. Me, do you think those were not literal days? And now the judge and the jurors, they're all leaning forward. And Bryant says, I do not think they were 24-hour days. I think they could have just as easy for the kind of God we believe in to make the earth in 6 days, or 6 years, or 6 million years, or 600 million years. So there it was. The 6 days in the Bible could have easily been 600 million years, the same number of millions of years as the textbook that John Scopes taught. Well, he just showed that this whole trial was a travesty. Why prosecute John Scopes, a Dayton school teacher, from teaching the same thing that this earth evolved over hundreds of millions of years? It was a travesty, and Bryant proved all of this was a fool's errand. Now, for the record, the Tennessee Supreme Court reversed because that fine should have been imposed by the jury, not the judge. You see, the Tennessee Constitution provided that no judge could impose a fine more than $50. But the Butler Act, under which they prosecuted poor John Scopes, had a minimum fine of $100. So it pays to read the law carefully. But when we got up there, Chief Justice Grafton Green gave us an extra gift. I want to read it to you. He wrote for the court. The court is informed that the plaintiff in error, that's John Scopes, is no longer in the service of the state. We see nothing to be gained by prolonging the life of this bizarre case. On the contrary, we think that the peace and dignity of the state, which all criminal prosecutions are brought to redress, will be better conserved by the entry of a nolle prosequi. Such course is suggested to the Attorney General. Well, there you have it. William Jennings Bryan's own testimony convinced the Supreme Court of Tennessee that this was a bizarre case, this Tennessee versus Scopes, and it should be nolle. That means dismissed. That means dismissed in the interest of the peace and dignity of the state, which means Tennessee didn't want to be the laughing stock of the nation and the world anymore. And that nolle is just what happened. The same day, Tennessee Attorney General Elliott Smith announced they were not going to retry it, and man, how we howled. Come back to court and try us again, we said. I'll see you and raise you. But those Bible-thumping buckham artists had had enough. They decided not that discretion was the better part of honor, but the better part of discretion was to cut and run.
Holmes, you expect me to put this into a letter? It makes him look like some sort of hero. This leftist, this subversive, this man who never met a socialist he didn't represent. What should we do here?
What should I do?
Here's what you do. You draft me a letter. And this letter will say, Kid, I didn't know him. I can't tell you about him. You'll have to find that out somewhere else. That's what you put in the letter. I did not know it.
Very well. Trust me, Director. This memo will never see the light of day.